Wow, it's been a little while since I made a Star Trek analysis video. This video will be a lot different than my last Star Trek review because I actually had the ability to record and use clips of the episode. Ah, here comes the demonetization. Good thing I wasn't trying to make any money off of this anyway. This video will also be longer since I can actually show what I wanted to talk about and therefore say everything I wanted to say. So the first thing that I want to say about the man trap is that it's actually not the episode that was recorded after the cage. Chronologically, the next episode made was Where No Man Has Gone Before, which is actually considered the third episode in the series. I considered doing it next since it was technically a second pilot, but I decided to just go on in the order that they were released. This is the first episode where we see Captain Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise we know and love. Jeffrey Hunt, who played Christopher Pike in this episode, left because he didn't think Star Trek would go anywhere. But he's really kicking himself in the leg now, huh? Wait, is he even still alive? Oh, wow, no, he died a long time ago. He lived just long enough to see the original series rise and fall. He probably died thinking it would never go anywhere. Wonder if he's watching this from the afterlife. Leonard Nimoy is there with him like, I told you, Jeff, you should have listened. I wonder if the show would have been as popular with Christopher Pike instead of James Kirk.
Mr. Spock, temporarily in command.
You can tell this isn't the next episode that was filmed because Mr. Spock's eyebrows have been fixed. I really don't understand why they decided to release Where No Man Has Gone Before after both The Man Trap and Charlie X. My guess is the same reason for the existence of the two-part menagerie. They were having trouble writing episodes and needed more time.
Is that one woman in Dr. McCoy's past?
Of course, it isn't just enough to be a bunch of nerds out in space visiting an archaeologist who fell ill while digging through the remains of a long-dead civilization. No, we gotta have a personal connection to it because, of course, in the whole wide expanse of space, the one place that they are sent is where the one woman that presumably Bones was in love with and she broke his heart currently is. What are the odds? Man, I love this show and the whole franchise, but just this entire opening and the whole personal connection thing, Star Trek really loved being way too overdramatic.
Pick some flowers, Doctor? When a man visits an old girlfriend, she usually expects something like that.
That looks like wheat.
How do I let myself into things like this?
Leonard. Okay, I know this show didn't have the greatest budget, and I know that trying to sync up sound to what's happening on screen can be difficult, but it's like they didn't even tell her that she was supposed to be singing as she walks in. Was that something they decided in editing? Because she's very obviously not singing.
I've heard a great deal about you.
All good, I hope.
Oh boy, that is a deflection response if I've ever heard one. Bones, what have you been telling Kirk about Nancy?
Oh, this is Captain Jim Kirk of the Enterprise. And Crewman Darnell.
How do you do, ma'am?
What's hilarious about this is that Nancy appears to Jim like she should, an aging woman with some gray in her hair. For Bones and the other guy, she appears as presumably a past love, and that's funny because Kirk has had like a dozen past loves that didn't work out. That boy falls in love more often than a red shirt dies.
It was different for me. I enjoy solitude. But for a woman, you understand, of course.
Was there really a stereotype in the 60s that women needed more social interaction and couldn't like solitude? I mean, I know women are generally stereotyped as more sociable of the two sexes nowadays, but I didn't know there was a time when women were thought to just not be able to like solitude. Generally speaking, I like solitude as long as I have something engaging to keep me occupied. Man, the 60s were weird.
Open your mouth.
Well, I thought the machine was...
The machine is capable of almost anything. I'll still put my trust in a healthy set of tonsils. Now open your mouth.
You're telling me that in 200 years, we're still going to be shoving popsicle sticks in people's mouths to see if they're healthy? I mean, I guess if it ain't broke. Alright, I can excuse one scream of shock at the discovery of a dead body, but the rest is just overkill. I know women were thought of as more fragile and frail creatures that couldn't handle even the sight of a tiny drop of blood, because, you know, that makes total sense for women, but she would have at least started screaming for her husband or something, not just piercing screams of terror. Star Trek was good, but it was so cheesy sometimes. Also, I guess the monster was colorblind because his shirt is not red.
Sure, your last subspace log contained an error in the frequencies column.
Mr. Spock, sometimes I think if I hear that word frequency once more, I'll cry.
Cry?
I was just trying to start a conversation.
Well, since it is illogical for a communications officer to resent the word frequency, I have no answer.
I mean, he's got a point. If you get tired of being told what frequency to set your stuff to, you really have no business being a communications officer. Also, I love the fact that they decided Spock was going to be adorably socially awkward from the beginning.
Why don't you tell me I'm an attractive young lady? Or ask me if I've ever been in love? Tell me how your planet Vulcan looks on a lazy evening when the moon is full.
Coming on a little strong there, Uhura? That second question seems a bit personal. Were these casual workplace conversation topics in the 60s? Also, was everyone just in love with Spock?
Vulcan has no moon, Miss Uhura.
I'm not surprised, Mr. Spock.
What does that even mean? That because Vulcans are purely logical beings, that somehow means they wouldn't have a moon? What?
Transporter room to bridge.
Spock and Uhura are clearly looking at two different places where the voice is coming from.
About the strange mottling on his facial skin surface, there is no reference to this symptom.
Well, then this man wasn't poisoned.
It's entirely possible he was, and the modeling just came from something else. From before he ate the plant. You're just jumping to conclusions a bit here. Not as bad as jumping in the first episode, but still jumping.
No alkaloid poison, what to look for. There's not a trace of it in his body.
Okay, now that is reason to say that he didn't consume something poisonous. That should have been what you led with.
One crewman, member of the landing party, dead by violence.
You can't really make that claim, can you? I mean, there's no evidence of any sort of violence used against him. No cuts or gashes or contusions. There's nowhere on his body that shows evidence of a blunt object or sharp object or jagged object or any sort of object being used against it. I really don't think some splotches on a person's face can be considered violence. So, what about this situation means you can claim death by violence?
Dispensary to captain.
Is dispensary what they called it before they decided on medbay? I didn't even know what a dispensary was, and that is another word for a medical clinic of some kind, even though it sounds like somewhere you'd go to get food, or at least supplies of some sort. The 60s were weird.
We found something.
What is it?
I'd rather not put it on the speaker.
What about the person not having salt in their body is so important that you don't feel comfortable saying it over the speaker? Oh yeah, spoiler, the guy had all the salt sucked out of his body. Also, if all the salt were sucked out of someone's body, I don't think the body would just exist, but without salt. The process of osmosis seeks to regulate solute presence in the cells. If there's a greater concentration of solute in the cell sucks up water to try and level out that concentration. If there's a great concentration of salt outside the cell loses water and sinks to try and maintain that balance. Since the salt between cells would have been removed first, that would make the concentration of salt within the cells greater than the concentration of salt outside of the cells, meaning that the cells would take in water. And since the concentration of salt would continually decrease and decrease until it was depleted, the cells would keep taking in water until they burst. So when Bones scanned him, he should have seen that something was very off, because that guy's body would have been just absolutely full of burst cells. And that probably would have killed him before the lack of one of the electrolytes prevented normal cell function would. This mystery should not have been a mystery as long as it was. But Star Trek, as amazing a science fiction show as it is, isn't exactly known for being very good at the science part.
Oh, Green, what went on down there?
You're telling me that the salt content from 3 grown men wasn't enough to satisfy it? Alright, time for some math. According to Harvard, the average human body contains about 250 grams of salt, so the creature has consumed 750 grams of salt in the span of about 2 days. The professor said he and Nancy started off with 25 pounds of salt 5 years ago. Even though there is some left for easy math, we're just going to say that it's all gone. If we assume that they consumed about the same amount of salt each day over that 5-year period, that would be 5 pounds of salt a year. 1 pound is equal to about 453.5 grams, so 5 pounds is almost 2,268 grams. Divide that by 365, and that is a little over 6 grams of salt a day. And yes, I realize that the days would probably be different on a different planet, but we're assuming that when they say a year, they mean by Earth time.
The recommended salt intake for a healthy adult is 1.5 grams, leaving just 3 grams of salt per day for the creature. If the creature has managed to go this long on 3 grams of salt a day, 350 grams in the past 2 days should have been more than enough to satisfy it.
Now, it is later revealed that Nancy, the real Nancy, had died. If we go with the sooner estimate and say that she's been dead about a year, that would mean that the professor and Nancy would have consumed about 4,380 grams of salt in 4 years. The professor would go on to consume another 547 grams or so of salt over the next year, meaning that Nancy and the professor consumed roughly 11 pounds of salt over that 5-year period, leaving 14 pounds for the creature to consume in the remaining year. 14 pounds is about 6,350 grams, leaving close to 17.5 grams of salt per day for the creature to consume. Any way you slice it, 1 crewman should have been more than enough for this creature if it's been able to survive off of 17 grams of salt a day for the past year, much less 4 crew members and still want more.
Expand search radius.
Yes, sir.
Ah, the sounds of the 60s.
Hello, Beauregard. How are you today, darling?
I get that this was the 60s and they had limited technology and a limited budget, but that is so obviously just someone's hand. Imagine if that was on your resume. My hand got to play a futuristic plant. Man, the 60s were weird. I don't know if this was on purpose, but the camera angle makes it to where Uhura's eyes perfectly reflect the light, making her seem even more starstruck at this moment, and like there's a literal spark between them. If this was on purpose, I thought this was a nice touch. 4 people and this thing still needs more salt. My God.
Apparently the killer can immobilize them as it approaches.
What evidence exactly do you have of this? I mean, you're right, but how do you know this? Spock, I love you, but this has to be about one of the most obvious subtly sneaking away I have ever seen.
Creature leading your merry chase, Mr. Sulu.
Creature?
Why do you sound so shocked that he would suggest such a thing? If there's a thing going around that can change appearance and physically interact with different crew members, I think it's pretty safe to call it a creature. I mean, technically calling humans a creature would be correct. Seems better than just calling it a thing. All I'm saying is Bones calling it a creature really ain't all that suspicious. What kind of run was that? If that was supposed to be some kind of dodge and weave thing, that was the most pathetic dodge and weave I've ever seen. You kind of looked like a drunk man trying to run. Oh, 60 special effects. You really were something.
Supplies of salt have been set out as bait at all decks and engineering levels, Captain. However, no one or nothing has approached them as yet.
Did they not bother to screen the people in this room to make sure it wasn't the creature? After just discovering that the creature could take any form? Seriously?
Recommend we use truth serum, Captain.
Is that ever used again in this series? Or was it a one-time thing and they were like, too much, and then just never used it again? Like those chairs that tell whether or not you're lying in that court episode of the original series. Future producers of Star Trek should really go back and rewatch the original series. Maybe the animated series too. There's a whole goldmine of ideas that were just kind of abandoned.
It's killing the captain! Shoot it, Doctor, quickly! It's killing the captain! Shoot, quick!
I'm pretty sure that counts as emotion.
It's not sense!
This is hilarious on so many levels. The fact that the creature just stands there and takes it with this blank expression. The fact that Spock's first instinct to prove that this isn't Nancy is to just hit it repeatedly. The fact that that works. The fact that this is so obviously faked. The way that Nancy just bitch slaps him once and he is down and out for the count. Just, this whole sequence is hilarious. It reveals its real identity and still tries to suck the salt out of Kirk. It thinks it can get away with this? I thought this thing was supposed to be intelligent. Like, why isn't it running, trying to get the hell out of there? Why is he the only one that screamed while having the salt sucked out of him? Like, it definitely would have been painful because all of your cells would be bursting, but why is he the only one in pain?
Something wrong, Captain?
It looks like they just stuck a piece of silver Velcro to your head. Is this what the stitches of the future are supposed to look like? Or is this the Band-Aid of the future? Either way, you sparkle and that's hilarious.
So, that was The Man Trap. As far as Star Trek episodes go, it was a pretty good one. The science may have been a bit off, but that's kind of to be expected with Star Trek. As far as early episodes of the series, I think this is one of my favorites. I definitely like it better than the 2 episodes that follow it. But what do you all think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. Leave a like, maybe subscribe, and if you want to support me on Patreon, check out the description. If you want to check out my other videos, they'll probably be somewhere on the screen right now.